Alright, welcome back to another lesson. In this game, I'm going to be showing perhaps my worst loss in a tournament ever. And I hope that you will learn from it and not make the same mistakes. I remember my coach at the time was incredibly upset with me for this game, and rightfully so. It did not go very well, and it was over very quickly. So let's just get into it. My opponent was young boy by the name of Darshan, rated almost 1700. And I remember at this tournament I was doing very well. I was playing players that were much higher rated than Darshan, and I had been doing. I think I'd scored 2 out of the 4 before this game. This was round 5, and so my rating was set to improve drastically. I was having a great tournament, and this was just a turning point that made all of that work just go up in smoke. So I played. My opponent played knight f3. I played knight f6, getting into a Petrov, and now my opponent played knight to c3 to decline going into the Petrov lines. So now we had to go into the 4 knights game, which is because all 4 of the knights are into the game. Very standard play. We see this quite often. So bishop to b5 by white now takes us into the Spanish variation of the 4 knights. And of course I respond with bishop to b4. Common response here. My opponent castles kingside, I castle kingside, and my opponent continues with pawn to d3, and I played pawn to d6. So at this point we have what is called a symmetrical position, which is a copy. Both sides are playing the exact same moves, and typically the idea is that the first player that breaks the copying will be the one with the better game or the advantage, depending on what's played. And so when my opponent played bishop to g5, this is the point which black breaks the copying, breaks the symmetry, and can get an equal game. Unfortunately, here's where I made my mistake, and at the time, it didn't seem like a big mistake. It wasn't until the next few moves were played that it became obvious that something had gone terribly wrong. And so here I played the move pawn to h6, and seemingly again it looks like an innocent move. We're attacking the bishop on g5, forcing it either to retreat or to exchange for the knight. And bishop for knight exchange is typically okay for the side that's getting the bishop. So but unfortunately there's a combination here that I overlooked. So after bishop takes the knight on f6 and queen retakes, white has this move with knight to d5. And this is what I didn't see. Because in my studies going back, I overlooked that instead of h6 here, the correct move was bishop takes knight on c3. And after b takes c3, obviously there's no more knight to jump to d5. Regardless if the bishop exchanges or not. There's just no more knight to d5 ideas, and I think I just got this confused in my mind. So this was the better line of play, of course, but I chose the h6 line, so I kind of skipped ahead a little bit, and it cost me dearly. Bishop takes, queen takes, and now knight to d5. And here black is losing a piece. Regardless of which piece, either the bishop's going to be lost or the knight on c6 is going to be lost. Either one, black gets to choose which one they want to keep. But then, of course, looking at the problems on the board, I make another mistake because this game was played 5 years ago, so I don't quite remember everything that was going on. But I do remember that at this point I was trying to save my piece with some counterattacking and so I played queen to g6, which should be a blunder, but it's also a bad move. But either way, there weren't any really good moves. But of all the moves, this was the worst to choose, because now white wins with a simple combination by force, and of course my opponent was good enough to see it. Bishop takes on c6, and I then tried some trick, I guess, with bishop to h3, which is also a mistake, threatening a checkmate in one move. But of course my opponent didn't fall for the trick and played knight to e7, which is a check on the king. And here I resigned because it's also a knight fork. If you remember our tactics when we talk about the fork of the knight, when the knight's attacking more than one piece at a time, the queen is going to be lost after the king moves, and also the knight was lost on c6. The bishop is probably going to fall on h3, and you're going to have a knight here attacking your rook on f8. This is just a terrible, terrible position for black. There's no point in playing it on. And here I just resigned. And it was terrible. We were there was hundreds of boards playing this tournament. We were the first ones up, walking out, and of course I wasn't on the receiving end of the win. So hopefully you see the idea here that white was able to take advantage of this knight on d5 resource. Very strong move, because we're attacking this e7 square, which leads straight to the king check, which is going to buy white a tempo, and we're also attacking the bishop on b4. This is just a powerful knight, d5, and so this is why on move 7 we capture the knight and get rid of it, because it can potentially become really strong. And so let's go back just one move to see these lines here. If I had played queen to d8 instead of the queen g6 line, we had instead chosen queen to d8, just retreated with the queen, kept it simple. Let me show you the line here where we drop the piece. One line can go bishop takes on c6, and if pawn recaptures, then the knight takes on b4. And so bye-bye bishop, and also the pawn on c6 is also under attack. And then if we go back to this move, bishop takes the knight. If we decide instead to save the bishop and retreat it to a5, then the bishop can just retreat to a4, and white got the knight on c6 for free. And it really doesn't matter if black tries to advance here to attack. White's just going to retreat, and we're not getting our piece back. So in this position, black is down a knight. Yes, we do have two bishops, and so maybe later on in the game we might be able to play for some tactics, but against a strong player, they'll be able to just grind this up a piece. They'll be able to grind this out to a win. So again, all these problems began with this move here with h6, allowing white the tempo or the time to get to d5, to play knight to d5. And once that happened, it was really all over for black. There's just so hard to defend this position in a tournament. So thank you for watching. I hope you learned how to avoid this type of mistake, and hopefully it doesn't happen in your games, or maybe you might be able to play it against your opponents. That's also going to be a good win for you if your opponents fall for this little trick. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.